Welcome back to the crypt. These gonna have to come off today. So as is usual now with my community chat videos, I'm going to be doing something else that's completely unrelated to what we're talking about, just because I have other things to do, but also I need to film a video. So we're gonna do both. And by we, I mean mostly you guys. I will do it badly and editing me will fix it as best she can. Today's topic is urban fantasy and a lot of the rules of urban fantasy, when to keep to them, when to not, and like the general idea of it. And as per usual on my channel, I have problems, no solutions or answers. So I'm not saying that things should be a specific way or anything, just what my opinions are and I want us to discuss because I'm interested in what you guys have to say on this topic. Urban fantasy. The whole reason I wanted to do something like this is because of the video that I did a while back now. Ooh, that was last year on Song of Dryad. I spoke quite a lot about my personal feelings as a witch who was reading that and how conflicted I was about some of it. It's rough because while on the one hand, yes, I do have feeling and idea about urban fantasy that's coming from a different direction than most people, as in I am a real witch in real life. At the same time, I recognize that most people don't even think witches are real. And as much as I want people to better educate themselves in like figuring out that kind of stuff, the reality is people just, they don't know. But it got me thinking of at what point do we start looking at things like urban fantasy and think, okay, when should I start being really, really true to the real world? And when does the fantasy step in? Because it is a combination of both our real world, along with all of its problems and issues, and fantasy with all of its tropes. These two things collide. And the idea behind the genre is that the tension and a lot of the building of how things happen within the story is the clashing of those worlds. At least that was always my interpretation of how the genre should be handled. I should probably figure out what I'm even doing. I don't know what look I even want to do. We could do a purpley look. I'm going to be actually also filming another video, which should be already out by the time this video comes out, that will, like the book cover has purple in it. So maybe I'll do purple. So one of the things that I saw when I looked up issues that people in general had with the genre was keeping magic hidden. And this was kind of interesting to me because I actually don't really like the idea of keeping magic hidden in a lot of these worlds because it doesn't really make any sense to do so. I actually usually end up preferring stories where the magic is something that most people know and have to deal with, and it's a part of everyday life for a lot of people. I find that personally, I find that to be more of an interesting idea and concept, is like people who have to deal with magical creatures every day and that is the norm for that world. But it's still urban, like most people don't have access to it, or there's a clear distinction between the people who have access to that world and those that do not, or there's some clear definition between the two realms. A lot of stories, it's kind of a hidden secret kind of deal. Like a core group of people seem to know about magic and these magical creatures, but a lot of people won't. Different stories will deal with it differently. Some will be like, oh, the government's in on it and they help hide it, which you guys, the government's so incompetent. I don't think people understand how incompetent the government is. That would never fly. But like, you know, it's a book, so I guess. But like, it's kind of unbelievable. I feel like the suspension of disbelief has to be so high when you're looking at, oh, it's a secret. Nobody knows about it. I feel like that's just one of those things where it's a little more unbelievable than if everyone just knows about it and it's just something they have to deal with. But the real one I want to talk about, the thing that I saw the most is like the biggest complaint that was repeat over and over amongst readers as well as fellow writers was the, it's kind of funny, A lot of people seem to use the genre as an excuse to do paranormal romance or detective-y hunt the creature type media. And that's not really doing anything else. Now I will say that whole like paranormal romance thing is like a problem. There's usually some kind of fantastical romance between a normal, everyday girl and some supernatural creature. And that falls right in line with paranormal romance, which I don't know if you're free to disagree with me if you like, but I feel like that's its own genre. And if you want romance, that's totally fine. There's no shame in that. If you like that kind of thing, that's fine. The problem is some of these are marketed as urban fantasies when really they're just romance. The reason that's kind of like a problem, at least for me and a lot of other people, is that we want to see the clash between the worlds. We don't want to just see someone getting like pushed down on a bed by a werewolf. Like, coming back to the topic of like how far should you take some of the realistic elements of the real world, like using Song of Dryad as an example, witches in that were supposed to be normal everyday people. And that's one of the beefs I had with it, was there are real witches and they're everyday people like me. There were lots of misconceptions of what witchcraft and magic was that were contained within it. And it was kind of weird because like it's one thing if you had witch characters and the witches were part of the fantasy part, where you're saying, you know, they aren't real necessarily, they're from this other realm and they're like their own species or something like that. That'd be one thing. And I would have no problems with that. If you want to have witch creatures that are from the fantasy realm, that's chill. The problem is when you ground them as normal everyday people, you're using the urban part of your urban fantasy. And that's like grounded in reality though. And so that means witchcraft should also be grounded in reality. But yeah, I don't know, like for me, because I am a witch, I would really prefer it that if people were going to bring in witches in their story, that they take a little bit of time to sit and think what the witches really are. Are the witches part of the fantasy element, or are you actually drawing in real witches and they're part of the urban element? Because if they're part of the urban element, it'd be really nice if people did a wee bit of research on what witches actually are. Or better yet, talk to a witch. A lot of us will talk to you. If you have questions, we'll do our best. I'm not saying we'll be able to answer everything, but we do our best. A lot of misinformation continuing to spread about witches, about who we are and what we do and what we're capable of. And most importantly, what we're not capable of. No, I can't just make someone fall in love with me against their will. It's not how magic works. That'd be like saying that I can make an item float in midair. I can't. Magic can't do that because magic would have to fight against the laws of nature. But magic utilizes nature. So that's a contradiction. I'm trying to make nature do something that's contrary to its natural function. So magic is more about pushing something that's already predisposed to be pushed. If something cannot be pushed because the laws in its existence code it to not be pushed, what do you think my laws, a witch's laws, which rely on the laws of nature, can do against that? You know? But this all is information most people don't have. Most people don't know that because they don't know any witches. They don't talk to them. And media is really terrible about this kind of thing. More like distant cousins and sisters, but it's whatever. I don't want to mess with it anymore. I guess the main question I have is, what do you guys think about how far we should take realism? Like with groups like witches, like granted, many of you are not witches, so you're probably going to have a different perspective of this than me. I don't know. I feel torn because like as a witch, I know most people don't think I'm real. And that most people, when they do find out I'm real, don't care. Even though we're real, we become a trope. We've been like that for so long. I feel like making points like this is kind of stupid in some ways. But at the same time, we're also not going to get anywhere if we keep thinking that way. If we keep thinking like, yeah, but this is a minor issue, so let's not talk about it. That also doesn't really necessarily get us anywhere. I think when you bring in the real world into the picture, I think you should consider how it interferes with perception of magic. And that doesn't mean I don't think fantasy magic has a place. If you've seen my review of Blood Like Magic, again, I'll link it somewhere, you'll know that, like, I think you totally can do it. Absolutely. But you need to make it so when the witches are part of the fantasy, which in Blood Like Magic they are, witches are part of the fantasy. It's not how actual witches operate. But not only is there a healthy blend of some things that are actually true with real witches, but also the fantasy elements that are truly fantasy have rules. Is it too much to ask for people to do a little bit of research on certain groups first before utilizing them in works of fantasy? Or do you think all's fair in fantasy? It's a tricky question, and I don't think there's any clear right answer. And I am a witch, and I'm saying that because I know people don't think I'm real. And I know people think I'm crazy, and that's fine. I seek no converts. I really don't care. But I think it's an interesting issue. What do you think about this? Oh, I always forget highlighter. To think that I used to do makeup to this caliber almost all the time is insane to me now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I look forward to discussing your opinions down below.